Okay, one last thing, and after this we will have some time for some questions. So I hope you're ready for that. Well, really, I hope I'm ready for that. I don't know if you're ready. I'm probably not. Anyway, let's pick up something that is again pretty obvious, I think, in our day. You're created to worship. You're a worshiping creature. And that means that you're always worshiping something. You're either worshiping God or you're worshiping yourself or something that serves you, that you love. That's always the case. And whatever you worship is your supreme allegiance. And that means that if you don't worship God, then you're worshiping yourself. That means that you have set yourself up as the one who is the supreme authority in your life. You're worshiping yourself. Your God is your belly, is the way Paul put it. That is, you're worshiping your own desires, your own lust. And that's the way the vast majority, it feels like the vast majority, I hope it's not, but that's the way the vast majority of the world thinks today. They're worshiping themselves. They're seeking, their ultimate goal is to please themselves and preserve themselves from all sacrificial labor or injury or anything else. And so it's no wonder that there's an aversion to anything that might cause discomfort or difficulty or inconvenience or sacrifice. We are so devoted to the worship of self that we can't imagine doing anything that interferes with our freedom to follow our own desires. And again, you see, that's why most, and I'm saying most, I'm assuming that the polls that have been taken, what do they call that, the things that they do, these polls, most Christian young couples are choosing not to have children. Now, that's not, that we know that's been true in the world, but now it's also becoming more and more true of Christians who are being married. They're going into marriage intentionally being childless or choosing childlessness. And the reason, I think, is this fear of responsibility and sacrifice that they know they can't get away from. Bonnie Irby, I don't know if you're not old enough to know Bonnie Irby, but she used to be on NBC as a female reporter when I was growing up, and I've listened to Bonnie Irby a lot. I don't know if she's still a writer for U.S. News and World Report. She was a few years ago. She's a woman who is, she says, childless by choice. And somebody said, and then she went ahead and explained it. She said, I have seen a lot of women give up promising careers for motherhood and never being quite able to fight their way back into the workforce. That's a sacrifice I could not have made. I wanted to follow my own dreams, not spend my life helping someone else follow his or hers. Okay, that's very straightforward and honest. She's telling you, I do not want to serve anybody. I'm serving myself. I've made a conscious choice. You don't like it? Tough. That's me. I've decided I'm serving myself. So there you go. Now, most people are not that honest. She's straight up about it. In other words, she's decided, and she's unwilling to consider what her life will be like in 15 years or longer or less. When nobody cares about her, when nobody reads her column, when she can't find a job anymore because she's too old, and her grand career is over. What then, Bonnie? You see, that's what you want to ask. She and many other women are headed for a very dark, quiet, and incredibly lonely future, but probably a neat apartment. So you'll have that. And they will have nothing but their own selfishness to blame. You live for yourself, you die alone. Keep it in mind. I heard I saw an article, one guy said, you know what, when you get to be 70, nobody wishes they had fewer grandchildren. Think ahead. This is the way of life. It's the way of the kingdom. It's the way Satan that doesn't want you to follow. He doesn't want you thinking this way. And this is why we must not allow the prevailing spirit of the world to be in us. But the truth is, as you all know, I don't have to tell you, rearing children drives you crazy. I mean, it's very difficult. Every day you're faced with something, you think, what in the world am I going to do about this? How do I handle this? What do I do here? What's going to happen when they want keys to the car? You know, all kinds of things hit you, and it is a very difficult, frustrating, trying job. It's easy to get upset about it. It's easy to be filled with worry. It's easy to be filled with fear. So the question I want to raise is, how can we have a better perspective on this business, bringing up our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord? What I want to offer are 9 words that I hope will help get a better perspective. The first word is relax. I don't mean don't care how you do this, or don't worry about what you're doing or not doing. Obviously, it means it's very important that you do this job as God calls you to do it as best you're able. You want to follow His word. It matters a great deal that you seek to honor Him in this and follow it. So I'm not saying don't worry about being faithful. That's not my point. My point is, be done with that fear that you're going to make that mistake that ruins all the children. You know, you did that and it's over. All of them are inevitably now going to be, you know, serial killers. And so we're not going to make it. We worry about messing them up. And that's true. All of us go through it. All of us feel like, I don't want to do that thing that messes up my children for life. But I love what Peter Lightheart has said. He said, don't worry about messing them up. You've messed them up already. You fathered them. If you wanted to keep from messing them up, you should have arranged for an immaculate conception. Too late for that. So don't lose any more sleep over it. The question is answered. Yes, you've messed them up. And of course, this is true. We have all made mistakes. We are going to make more. We've already made enough mistakes to send them and all their relatives to hell. There's no point in living in fear of making mistakes, because we're going to do it. The issue is, how do you respond to your mistakes? What do you do when you sin? Well, you do what you want your children to do. You tell them, Daddy sinned. That was not right. What I did was wrong. And I need you to forgive me. When you mess up, correct it. Pray that the Lord will help you to learn from your mistakes, and trust Him to overrule your mistakes so they don't do long-term damage to your children. Seek to do what God says to do, and do it in the best way you can. And don't worry about missing the one right way to do it. There is no one right way. I want to do my best, but just the truth is, just about everything I have done and seek to do could be done better. There's probably a better way to do it. There's probably something more that could have been done. There's some better way to say it, some better way to apply it. And that's always going to be true. But all I can do is do what I think is best, pray that the Lord will bless my efforts, and not worry about missing the one right way of doing it. Because the fact is, I'm sure you can do it better at various points. And that's just the reality. It's just like our parents. Some of our parents feel when they hear this stuff, they go, oh man, I was so terrible as a parent. Hey, you know what? You can't go back. All you can do is say, I should have known better, but I didn't. I just never learned these things. Nobody ever taught me. And that's all true. That's all true. You do the best you can. You seek to learn from others. You try to do the wisest thing for the moment, seeking the Lord. And even if 5 years later you feel like you see, oh man, that wasn't the wisest thing. Okay, but you know what? You were seeking to honor the Lord there. And so he's using it, even if it wasn't the absolute wisest thing that anybody's ever done in the history of the world. It probably wasn't, but the Lord still will use it. Love your children, trust them to the Lord, remember his sovereignty. Again, Peter Leithart says, remember that God is sovereign. God rules over all things for his own purposes, including our children. We must make every effort to train them in his ways, but their future is ultimately in his hands, and that's a good thing, for we would certainly make a muddle of things. For parents, the truth is that God is sovereign, and that means relax. So rest, do your best, seek to learn, seek counsel, like we all do. We all ask one another, what's the best way to do it? How you handle it? What are you doing? What am I doing wrong? We do all of that. We do it all. Then do the best we are able and commit it to the Lord for him to use it in their lives. The second word is availability. And that means just being there for your children, spending time with them. And I don't mean playing with them all the time. In fact, that's not the point, although you should play with them, of course. But I mean simply being there, even if you're not actively interacting with them. It's not like you're sitting there playing Old Maid or playing a game or pretending. Of course you do those things, but that's not really what I'm saying here. It's just the fact that you are there that's important to your children. The fact that you are actually on the premises is the stabilizing factor for them and a peace-giving factor for them. It's just like God's presence with us. God doesn't always manifest his presence in visible, tangible ways, but he's always with us. And we get comfort from the fact that he's not far off from us. He hasn't forgotten us. He's with us. He's not always with us like he is on Sundays. When we get to hear his voice, we get to hear him speak, we get to eat at his table. There are visible ways and manifestations of his presence on Sunday that we don't have Monday through Saturday, but we still know he's with us, and that's why it's a comfort Monday through Saturday to know that he's present with us. Well, it's the same with you. Being a mother is a full-time job. It's a calling. It's not a hobby. And we need to remind ourselves and one another that that's the case. And I say that simply because there are a lot of moms that are, and I realize situations are different. Some moms have to work. There's no alternative for them. They have to do it. Situation is such that they can't get away from it. But many are choosing to be away. It's not necessary, but they want to. They want to be away because it's easier to be at a job than it is to do mommy all day. And you know that, I know that, because mommy work is the hardest of all kinds of work. The CEO of IBM doesn't have as much headaches as mama has every day. That's the hardest work of all. And so many women don't want it. And the job is a retreat. It's a way of staying away from children. And they justify it by talking about quality time. Now again, don't take me to be unreasonable or anything like that. I realize every situation is different. But there's a problem with this thinking. And I want to talk about the problems with quality time. One of them is that you tend to overscript it. Mothers feel guilty because they're away from their children. And so when they're with them, they got an hour and a half. Man, we're going to do all kinds of fun things. We're going to do this, that, and you're not going to be able to breathe for an hour and a half. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to cram stuff down your throat. So there's a special project, there's a special outing, there's a special activity in order to be sure that the children have a memorable time with you since it's so short. You want it memorable. And the problem is, again, this overlooks the geography of the mother. There's a thing that Robert Capen's phrase is the geography of the mother. In other words, mothers are supposed to be there, And they are special because they are there. Being a mother is more than being an event planner or a tour guide or a playmate. Being a mother means being the one who anchors the home and makes the home comfortable, serene, joyful, a place of peace and rest because you're present. So you don't have to do all these frantic activities to make it memorable. It's memorable because you're there. And being there is enough. And scripted play, by the way, is not always best. Your children need the freedom to explore and imagine and play on their own without you interfering with them. They need to develop their own imaginations and make their own stories up so that you're not there always telling them how to do it and all of that. Let them do it on their own. They need to think by themselves. But you need to be present, not present in the room hovering over them, but present in the house. And this is why, right, your children, they'll be playing happily by themselves down in the den. All of a sudden they stop and they go and start looking around and start calling for you. And they, Mama, where, Mama? And you say, I'm in here. And they go, oh, okay, fine, going back. And they go back. It's just to be sure you're there. See, they don't want you to come and play. You don't have to build the blocks with me. I just want to be sure you're here. You're here, I'm fine. Okay. Your presence makes it all right. That's the thing, and it's good for them there. So that's the first thing. It's not your presence makes playing safe to them. You don't have to be involved to make play important. It's the fact that you're in the kitchen or you're in the living room that makes playing in the backyard fun. The big thing is that you're there. Your presence makes playtime special. And one of the reasons why children are so demanding of your attention is because they don't have your presence all the time, so that when you're there, you got to hear everything, you got to be everything, you got to do everything right there with them, you got to be here, you can't leave the room. Why? Because you're not there. You're gone most of the day, so when you're there, I got to get you. You got to know everything that's going on. And it drives you nuts. But the reason is you haven't been there. You haven't been able to share any of this. And the other thing is quality time often encourages inconsistent discipline. Because your time is brief, you don't want it to be negative. You want it to be fun. You don't want to spend the time fussing or complaining or rebuking or spanking. You want it to be pleasant. And so you tend to overlook things that ought to be chastised or dealt with because you don't want it to be negative, because that's going to ruin the whole point. You seek to then to placate and bribe. Attitudes that should be dealt with faithfully, you let them ride. And then when your bribing and your placating doesn't work, what happens? You get very frustrated and angry. And then you say and do something you shouldn't do, and then you feel guilty again. So all you've done is multiply your guilt, and you need to face it. The truth is that for most people, quality time is an invention simply to help moms assuage their guilt for not being home. And so we've invented this thing called quality time. I love the quote I saw from Seinfeld this week or last week. He says, I don't want quality time. I want the garbage time. That's what I like. You just see them in the room reading a comic book, and you get to kind of watch that for a minute, or having a bowl of Cheerios at 11 o'clock when they ought not to be, they're not supposed to be up. The garbage, that's what I love. That's it, you see. He's enjoying the life, and he's actually able to observe the life. God has called us to a full-time job here. And listen to Deuteronomy 6. Here's how you do it, he says. You shall teach what God has commanded diligently to your children, and shall talk with them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. That ain't a part-time job. That's full-time. And that's the way it is. And if God in his providence, you have to be away, there's a situation, you can't do anything about it. Don't worry, God will work it out. He understands the situation. But you have to think about these things, that you can't do it. Don't voluntarily make it a part-time job when it's a full-timer. All right? Then the third word, love. Express your love to your children in every appropriate way. Tell them you love them and love them. Love on them. Demonstrate your pleasure in them. Rejoice and weep with them. Encourage and support them. rebuke and correct them. Do all the things that manifest your love. And do them over and over again. But please do not lie to your children by telling them they can be whatever they want to be. Or by telling them they're the prettiest that there ever was, or the smartest that there ever was, or the best that ever was. They're so good at everything. You know, children are not stupid. If I struck out 3 times, you say, you're the best player on the team. No, I'm not. I struck out 3 times. Don't tell me that. What is wrong with you? Don't you know baseball? Please just tell me the truth. That was a tough day, man. Good pitcher. That's all right, though. You work hard. You know, you work hard, you try your best. It's still fun to play, though, isn't it? Even when you strike out, it's fun. So that's the thing. Enjoy your time. Don't lie to them. They don't need you lying to them because they know it's a lie. I'm not the prettiest one ever was. There are lots of prettier girls in the room. I'm not the smartest person. No, there are lots of smarter people in the world. And it's a good thing because if everybody was depending on me, we'd be in big trouble. We'd be still using sticks and stones and stuff crazy people. We'd be in the caves. Thank God they're smarter people than me. That's a good thing. Well, I want the children to understand that they don't have to be a professional or a winner or the best or the greatest. I love them, and God loves them even when they fail. They did their best. They sought to glorify Him. That's what I'm looking for. That's what we need. We need people who do their best when they're not the best. We need people who are still willing to try to glorify God when they're not good at it. And it's okay. And they know they're not the best. That's all right. The point of our encouragement is to encourage them to work harder in their areas of weakness so that they can improve. Encouragement doesn't exaggerate the gifts or the abilities of another. It seeks to stir him up to develop his talents. Work harder, because that's the way it works. You don't get gifts, don't mean magical gifts from heaven that all of a sudden you have this amazing capacity to do something you've never studied and you never practiced. That's not the way this works. If you can play an instrument, it's because you worked your hiney off to do it. If you can paint a picture, it's because you were taught and you practiced and you worked hard, and now look at you. You can draw. Isn't that good? That's not a magical gift from God. That's not this magical, amazing talent. I'm so aggravated with parents talking about how talented this group is or that child is. They worked hard. They were taught how to do it, and they practiced. And now they're good. That's the way it works. That's the way God gifts you, you see. That's what gifting means. You're working hard. Nobody just does things, wakes up one morning and all of a sudden says, I think I can do calculus. No, that's not the way this works. And we're not hiring you for NASA because you haven't been trained for that. We want our children to be the best, to do their best, to learn to sacrifice, to persevere in the face of discouragement and opposition. They have to learn to do their best, even when they fail. That's all right if you did your best. Be sad when you didn't do your best, not when you lost. If you tried your best and you lost, man, you had fun, congratulate the other team. They won the game. That was good for them. You'll be, try better next time. You get another shot at it. Life isn't over. It doesn't kill you to lose. Work hard. Enjoy the fact that you were able to do it. And I don't mean participation trophies. I just mean, man, come on. Acknowledge the winner. Good for them. So encourage your children. Don't flatter them. And don't tell them they can be whatever they want to be, because they cannot. That is a lie that provokes all kinds of discontent and unhappiness and bitterness. You can tell them, I want you to work hard. I want you to, pursue. Well, you got an interest, pursue it. You never know what God's going to do with you. That's the exciting thing about life. You never know what God's going to do. The fourth word is chasten, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because I mean chasten in the right way. Rebuke, correct, instruct, apply the rod in love, seek them to grow in wisdom, and when you in other words, again, don't every situation is different. Sometimes you have to be really quick with all this, I realize, but most ordinarily you have the time to calm down yourself and sit them down and calmly explain, this is what you did wrong. This is why we have to give a spanking. And I want you to ask forgiveness when we're finished, and I want you to be happy when we're over. And so we're going to love, we're going to spank, and then we're going to love, and you're going to be happy the rest of the day. because you're going to be glad that you got forgiven, and you're going to be happy to obey from here on. Yes? And yes, so afterwards we always had to smile, even if it was, I'm smiling. Okay, good. That's the way it is. That's what we do. That's who we are. We smile and give thanks, and we're thankful that God forgives us for our sins, and we learn our lessons. That's how you do it. This is why God says, if you don't do this, you hate your children. Don't try to be wiser than God. Like so many people in our day are thinking they've got a better way to do it. No, you don't, and your children prove it. Your children are monsters. You say, I don't know how you have 3 children. I don't know how you had 1. That 1 would drive me crazy because you don't discipline them. You let them do anything. They're mad children. They're monstrous. Come on. Love your children. Do what you're supposed to. 5th, thanksgiving. Give thanks daily. Be thankful that you're given the opportunity to sacrifice. Now, that's not something I normally am thankful for. I'm usually aggravated about it. But the fact is, it's good for me to be forced to sacrifice. And children force you to do it. Be thankful that you've been given the privilege of shaping the future, because you have. You'll have more influence through your children than you'll ever have personally, most likely. Give thanks that God is using your children to transform you into His image. Children give you daily an opportunity to be conformed to the image of Jesus, and that's not a small blessing, that's a great blessing. So be thankful every time they irritate you. These are the hard things. Be thankful that for all the frustration that comes. Quit thinking about what you're giving up. Remember that God thanks. Remember what God thinks of your children. They're your true riches. Be thankful, that you're not boring anymore. You used to be boring when you were single, but now look at you, man. You're crazy. You're crazy wild, interesting now. You're doing all these things that you would never do on your own. We've gotten into things just because of the children that we would never have gotten into. And they've been great. They've been fun. But I never would have gotten into them if the children hadn't gotten into them and gotten interested in them. Then I get interested in them, and all of a sudden I'm having this fun I've never have had before. I'm not boring anymore. At least I don't think I am. Maybe. Not anymore. So be thankful. Be future-oriented. That's a hyphenated word. It counts as one. Future orientation. Remember to think long-term. Don't dwell on the poop and the throw-up and the mess of the day or the things that are broken. Think of what you're laying the groundwork for. Think of what's going to happen now for you and those around you in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now. Think of the comfort and the joy you're going to receive from them when they are parents and have their own families and homes, and how amazing that's going to be. Think of all the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, the human beings that would never have existed if you hadn't been brought together as husband and wife and had a baby. There are thousands of people that wouldn't be in the world if you hadn't gotten married and had a child. Think of all this stuff and be thankful. And then seventhly, pray. Jesus said, ask and it will be given you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open. And in Luke's gospel, he says something else. He says that, and then he says, if no human father, if your child asks for an egg, you wouldn't give him a snake. If he asked for bread, you wouldn't give him a stone, because what kind of father would do that to his child? And then he says, if you being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? You see what Jesus has done there? He says, not even sinful human fathers do these kind of things to their children when they ask for stuff. If they ask for an egg, you don't give them a scorpion. You give them an egg, if you got it. Sometimes you go get one, because you want to do good things for your children. You like to give good things to your children. You like to see them happy. It's fun to do good things and to say yes instead of no. That's a fun thing. But he says, if you can do that, how much more does God do that? And he not only gives you eggs, he not only gives you bread, he gives you the Holy Spirit. When you ask, he gives you the greatest gift of all. He gives you himself. And so we need to pray that God will give us the Spirit and work in our children and in us so that we grow as a family, that he would conform every member of our family to the image of Jesus, that he would make our home this glorious garden of life and peace, that he would bind us together, that we would love one another, that you will love your wife and she will love you, and that you will love your children and they'll love you, that your home will be filled with the fruits of righteousness. And pray believing. God wants to do, he loves to do this. He says the reason you don't have is because you haven't asked. Ask, and I'll give it to you. He loves to give good gifts to his children, so pray to the Father, your Father, who is kind and good and who knows how to do it. Pray that he give you what you need. And then the 8th word is trust. Do your best, and then trust the Lord. That's all you can do. God has given us the responsibility to teach and to train, to bring them up in the fear, admonition and fear of the Lord and nurture of the Lord. So train them to follow his commands in all that they do. Don't exasperate them needlessly and sinfully, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And it's important that we realize that this is all we can do. You need to face it, because all of us want to think that there's more. There's got to be a silver bullet that ensures a good outcome. And the truth is, there isn't. We have wonderful promises that we can trust, and we know what God is like. But we cannot change our children's hearts. We can't do for them what we want them to do. We want them. They are not wet cement, like one book implies or says. Rearing children is not a matter of following a recipe, that if you do it right, the cake's going to be good. That's just not the way this works. Ordinarily, righteous children come from righteous homes. That's the way it is. Ordinarily, evil children come from evil homes, but sometimes God is pleased to overrule the evil influence of evil parents, so that you find a faithful, godly Josiah, one of the great kings of Israel, one of the most righteous kings of Israel, coming out of the home of one of the most wicked kings of Israel, King Ammon. Sometimes, in his inscrutable wisdom, you see very evil men coming out of righteous homes. So the ungodly Jehoahaz rejects everything that his father Josiah taught him. And he does great evil. God himself is a father. He calls himself a father. And he disciplines and trains his children, and yet some of his children have done some of the most grievous rebellion of all. Adam, his son, rebelled against him and brought death on the human race. Israel, his son, rebelled against her calling to be the light of the world. Both rebelled in the face of his grace and mercy. This is part of the mystery of wickedness, and it is reality. But the covenant, you see, so even though it doesn't guarantee, absolute guarantee of godliness, even though we understand apostasy is a sad reality, we still have a God who has promised to bless our sincere and faithful, even though flawed efforts to do what he has said to do. And on that basis, we're to look with holy confidence that God will work his purposes in and through us, and our labors will not be in vain. And they will not. They will bear good fruit. We're not to labor as a Pharisee, thinking that if we do it right, God is obligated to give us the right product. Nor do we labor, though, as someone who is afraid and doubtful, as if everything is a roulette wheel and it doesn't matter what we do because we can't control the outcome. That's not the way we labor either, because we do have a faithful God who remembers his covenant to us. God always works according to his sovereign purposes, and because it's God who is at work, we can know that the outcome is not an arbitrary thing, it's not a capricious thing. His purposes are the fruit of his own infinite wisdom and goodness. So there's no reason to be afraid or to carry out this work of child rearing, or wondering if our efforts will bear fruit. They do, they will, and they will work together for the good purposes of God for the world. That's the way we do it. So we trust in Him to work it out. Do our best, trust in Him, leave the results with Him. And the last word is glory. The goal of parenting is to seek the well-being of your children and the glory of God and the good of the world, not to gain a reputation for yourself. And too often, Christian parents have viewed this whole work as something that will bring glory to them. Well, in a certain sense, of course, it does. But that's not the goal. It's not about being able to point to your children and bask in their glory as if they are the work of your hands. They are the work, and they are there. They are who they are because of God's blessing. And He has used your faithful efforts. That's all absolutely true. But it's not about seeking your glory. It is about seeking their well-being and the glory of God and the good of the kingdom. We want them to rejoice and prosper. We want them to live out their lives in a way that brings blessing to the world. And so our task in parenting, like all of our other tasks under the sun, if it's to be done faithfully, we do it in love, trusting the Lord to overrule our errors and bless our efforts in their lives. Don't fret over it. Don't worry over it. Don't tie yourself in knots. You do your best. You trust in the Lord, who is the one who is able to keep you and your children from falling. And He is able to do it. And we pray that He will. Okay, well, let me stop there and see if there are questions. We've got almost 25 minutes. Aaron.
You touched on a few times the idea of happiness and what we might say the path of happiness or righteousness. Can you kind of expand on what that means as we seek to imitate the patterns of God's house in our house, to restore happiness or righteousness, restore to uprightness? What is it?
Right. Well, the happiness, the pattern of this is the same as the pattern of everything else. God is always our pattern. He's the one who is the great example. So He is the one in whom all life and blessedness, and that blessedness is that true happiness there, that blessed man stuff. That's all God's. And we share in this as we conform to Him. So if I'm going to truly be happy, I have to follow His commands. I have to live like He has commanded me to live, and in a way like He lives Himself. So He doesn't sin, so I must not. He sacrifices Himself for the well-being of others. He seeks to honor His Son. His Son seeks to honor Him. The Spirit seeks to honor the Father and the Son. So I have to live in the same way toward everyone around me. I have to live in that same way, showing respect and honor to them. He is the one who blesses, who enriches others. So I want to have His blessing so that I can then be a fountain of life to others. And all of the things, and all of this comes because of the way this happens in the life of Jesus. We know that that's going to involve suffering for me. Sacrifice, suffering, giving up my own desires for the well-being of others, for the good of others. And so all of that together makes me realize this is what true happiness is. This is how to experience the abundant life of God. So Jesus says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that they may have life and have it abundantly. That abundant life is the fullness of God's life. And we share in that as we are conformed to His image. So that is the goal of our discipline. And I always, you always want to try to remind your children, look, I want you to be truly happy and blessed throughout your days. I want you to have a full life. You can't have it if you don't learn to obey, if you don't learn to honor others, if you don't learn to be faithful when I tell you to do something, whatever the issue is. That's always my ultimate goal. I want that always setting before them. We want you to, the whole goal here is to have you have a life of joy and completeness, living like God. But that means that you're going to have to learn to sacrifice. That means you're going to have to humble yourself. That means you're going to have to ask forgiveness. That means it means a lot of stuff. But all of that leads to true happiness. Maybe I'm missing the point here.
You know, that term holiness can be kind of hard. I find it hard to grasp or understand, or how we encompass it in our lives, where we tend to, like you touched on kids in sports, to say, if I'm not going to be excellent in that, I'm just not going to do it anymore. But we need to have this cycle of, with ourselves and with our children, of this restoration. So when we try this pursuit of excellence, we try, we messed up, all right, let's reset. It's not ruined. We don't give up on each other, or give up on family.
Yeah.
How do we, this.
Yeah, well, I think it's important that they know I don't have to be the winner or the best in order to be a blessing to others. I don't. I mean, the fact that I'm willing to try to serve, even though there are others that can do it better. But I want to try too. I want to do that because I know it's what I ought to do. Okay, well then that was a great help to us. Was it if you always want, was it the best that anybody's ever done? Well, no, it wasn't. But that's all right, because it was a great help. It was a real contribution. It was a help, and that's where you can be thankful for being able to push the wheel, push the wagon forward. You did it. You didn't do it all by yourself, but that's okay. You do it, and that's the thing that brings great joy. That's meaning. That's why you're here. You're here to serve and to do as much as you can to help others and glorify God. And I think keeping that before them helps them to realize that, there are a lot of people that can do this better, but I'll do what I can, and that's important for me to do that and to contribute to this work. Yeah.
What was the lighthearted quote from?
I think it was from just a little brief. Yeah. I didn't actually remember. I don't think it was in a book anywhere. I think it was on just one of his columns. Yeah.
Talked about availability, and a lot of points about things that mothers can get into if they're not able to be at the house, if they need to work. What about fathers that are working? Is that an area we'll get into at some point?
Yeah, there is something of a different calling, that fathers are generally the ones who are providing for the whole house. So that means they have to be out of the home. And there's a sense in which their presence then is still important, but is obviously not as important as the mom who can be there, assuming all other things being equal, that she doesn't have to be out of the home that much. And it's important that she be there. In a certain way, there's a sense, and I'm not sure quite how to put this, but without sounding like I'm really a heretic, but there's a sense in which the mom's presence is in a way more important than the dad. That doesn't mean the dad's presence is not important. It just means that mom's presence has an impact, and in certain ways it's kind of a mystery that it has an impact that is even more important than dad, because dad usually has an obligation to be out of the home. That's not always the case, and you know that there are different circumstances and situations. So you don't want to make a hard and fast rule. That'd be kind of foolish to not consider the fact that there are all kinds of factors that have to be brought in. But commonly, it's very, very important. Mom's presence is important, without discounting dad's presence. But you think about it, I mean, of course, it's connected to the fact that he's known her longer. He's lived with her a lot closer than he lived with dad, even though he knows dad. Children in the womb learn a lot about the family. Of course, they're hearing a whole bunch of stuff, good and bad, but they know who the brat is, who's the sneaky one. They know all the brothers and sisters, so they come into the world knowing who to trust and who not. But they love Mama. Mama has always been there, and Mama's the one that can calm him down. Mama's the main one, and Dad helps. He's a good guy too, but need Mama more than Dad often.
In the first talk about the children coming to the world cut off, and for communion with God, you said We must recognize the influence of sin, our discipline of them. Instruction alone is not sufficient. There must be chastening as well. What does that look like with, a 1-year-old?
Yeah. I mean, it varies, obviously, but even those that are very young, you can see sometimes they're rebelling. They throw a tantrum. Our sons always did that before we left the hospital. Seemed like they get going quick. So they already have practiced apparently in the womb. But I think even there you could say no. And even the word no that's not yes, that's a different word, and your expression shows Daddy's not happy or Mama's not happy with that. That is not the way we act. And if it continues on, there are ways of stinging. We're not talking about wailing with this massive paddle that's going to cause injury. There are ways I would just thump their thigh and say, no, don't do that. No, that doesn't hurt, doesn't do anything, but it stings, and it's connected with no, and they learn, oh, that's not something good because that hurt. That hurt a little bit. I don't like the stinging. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has to do that. Obviously, there are ways of handling this, and usually when we're talking about the application of a rod, it's when they're older, when you can actually communicate a little better. But still, before they can respond to you, they can learn a lot about what's acceptable, what is not. And there are appropriate ways to give them that physical chastisement that they can handle. It's something suited to their situation where it doesn't injure or harm them, but they connect that was bad with pain. Is that?
Yeah, that's what we can struggle with. He can understand when we say no, but how do we need to add something to it?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the situation, how serious it is, but if he just starts throwing one of these tantrums to teach all of us a lesson, it's like, I'm going to teach you don't do this to me. Then there may be a point where you say, hey, Bubba, that's not the way we act in this house. You have to do what Mom and Daddy said, and you need to be happy now. And if he doesn't shape up, then you may want to utilize some kind of stinging so that they know, this is not good, Bubby. This is not the way you live. God is not happy with this kind of thing. And we would talk that way even when we knew they probably don't fully understand everything, but I want them to know they're familiar with the sound of these words. They actually begin to learn these things. And so when I'm saying God's not happy with the way you're acting, and that means I'm not happy either. And Mama's not happy, you're not happy, nobody's happy. And why is nobody happy? It's because you are sinning. You're making everybody happy, and we want to be happy in our house, and you're not letting us be happy. And I would just talk like that and then say, so now I have to make you happy. Daddy doesn't like to do this, but it's effective, and we're all going to get happy, so let's get happy.
There was an article by Jim Wilson about saturation love, which is his book on business. And I think one thing, I feel like all this points to that concept, but I think for parents who are struggling a lot with temper tantrums and things where they feel like there's just a sense of unhappiness there. I don't know if you mind expanding on it, or it's just the idea that if you keep the cup full, a lot of the issues of anxiety, frustration, fear aren't there because their cup is full. The idea is that they're saturated with love, and there's comfort, there's joy, there's peace, there's security, there's where are you, Mama? I'm here, and they know. And I think a lot of times we forget the time of just loving them, and that when we love on them, that desire or the need, they're going to get attention one way or the other.
Right.
And you want it to be positive, joyful, godly, loving attention, or a reaction to a deprivation of love. And I think that it's not something you do necessarily, but and every child is different. I'll say, with our own children, I've got one child who we got to love on her all day long, and by the evening she'll go to sleep. And I've got one child on weekend, and he's full for over 1 month. So I don't think exaggerating, but I think that's something that there's a tangible response to proactive. You mentioned, say you love them, be honest. It's just that availability, all that thing comes, and I think that there was a nice article by him describing what saturation love was, even when it seems counter to how you typically would discipline your child. You've seen these repeated activities, you
get more focused on discipline, and it spirals.
Right. Well, that's why you don't identify discipline with spanking. I mean, that's just one piece, but that's not the whole. The whole is, in fact, demonstrating the love of God to them. The only thing I would say is, remember, we always are sinning against the greatest love. Every time I sin, so that love and the expression of love doesn't prevent me from sinning. And it doesn't prevent our children from sinning. So I don't disagree with the point of obviously loving the children, but we shouldn't think that that's going to mean that they won't ever throw a tantrum. No, sometimes they will, just to show you they don't appreciate that. They've got their own thing, and you're trying to love them, and I don't like you loving me right now. And well, so there's always going to be chastening in the midst of this, but the goal is still, you got to realize we love you. This is the reason why we do everything we do. It's not. And that's the good point is, if I only pay attention when there's disobedience, then I'm going to run into a lot of trouble. So that's where all the other discipline, which the fullness of discipline is doing all the other things too, so that I'm not only paying attention when they mess up and when they disobey. If that's the only time they get attention, then I'm asking for full-time disobedience, because they want that attention for sure. Yeah, Heidi?
Wilson's article is that the spankings become effective only in the context of saturated love.
So, because they are sure you're not being mean, that you're not trying to punish. See, that's the other thing. It's not punishment. When we're chastening, we're not condemning them to hell or condemning them to prison or something like that. And that's why I want to practice saying, I'm not going to punish you, because that's not my job. My job is to chasten you, and that's an expression of my love for you, not my distaste or my concern that you be cast away and put into outer darkness, which is what punishment implies. It's a little thing, but it's a word. Word's important.
I think we've all had bosses or seen examples of people that are negative all the time.
Yeah.
And as parents, we should want our children, in the context of Jim Wilson's, this idea of an environment of love, they shouldn't be shocked at and not recognize us when we're kind to them. And so if the only time they get our attention is when we're fed up and they're negative and going to blow up at them, it's going to lose its effectiveness if that's just the tone all the time. And the other warning is, as soon as they're physically able, they're gone. They're going to be out of the house and away from family, away from what we're encouraging them to be a part of with community and church.
Right.
But in this environment of love, to not neglect the necessity to make correction.
You were talking about the steps of chastening, how you grab your child or you calm yourself, and then you tell them what they did wrong, spank them, ask for forgiveness, and then love on them and restore them. What does that look like? As a lot of us are growing up, our children now, we've got a lot of teenagers in our house, and we're growing from childhood to adulthood and wanting to, kind of remove the rod part of the chastening. What does that look like when we're talking about an actual event that we need to care for?
You're talking about a teenage child. Yeah, I think usually that's dealt with by just confrontation, like you would a friend, someone else, and say, let's talk here for a minute, what you did. However you deal with that, I want to hear sometimes what was the rationale for that. And of course, the answer very often is like my answer. I don't know. I just did it. And that's, sin makes you stupid. I don't know. Your children always say that, and they're telling the truth. That's the thing you have to remember, because if you were to ask me, why did you do it? I'm going to go, oh no, I just thought it was a good idea at the time. It just seemed like the right thing. I don't know. And so but that's the way we would sometimes start, and just talk it through and say, this cannot continue. Look at what's going to happen here. You're going to turn into this kind of man, or this way. That's not going to be. You got to think through it. You got to repent. You're showing dishonor. All the things that you would normally say to encourage others to turn away. the point of, the rod, the chastening and the spanking is done early on so that you don't have to do it later on, or that God doesn't have to do it later on, because we are chastening so that I don't want him having to do something to bring them to their senses, which is usually a lot tougher than what we are doing. So, and that's another thing to tell your smaller ones. So look, Mom and Dad are doing this because the Lord loves you, and he will actually teach you this lesson, but it may not be, it'll be far easier now. You need to learn it now. It's easier to learn it now than it will be later on. That's going to hurt a lot more later on. And that's absolutely true. So I don't want the Lord having to chase them down later on and chase them. I'd rather do it now, and I want them to realize that's where we're going. And so that when they get older, say, remember what we said. This is why you got all those spankings. You have got to be faithful now. And so we're serious about it, and we expect this of you. We love you. You've got to do it. So let's do it and be happy. Angel?
Okay, so this is just a real practical question and very applicable to our house. When you have multiple children that are close in age, and you feel like you're constantly, one is easy. They're very teachable, they're very compliant, and there's either standard two that aren't, or one that's incredibly requires lots of time, but they all have the same ingrained sense of fairness, and they do realize that one is constantly being chastened. And how do we as a family reconcile that? I don't know if I'm asking it well. How do we assure the child that is constantly being chastened that we are doing it for his benefit?
Let's take the example. So I've got this one, let's say it's the brother, and he's complaining because the sister doesn't get it like he does. And so what I've said is, what does sister do when we talk to her? Does she act like you? Or does she learn? Does she say she asks forgiveness quickly? She's sorry about what she did. She wants to do better, and she assures us. And she actually does do that. What do you do? Why don't I spank sister? Because she does what spanking's supposed to do, but guess what? You don't. And that's why you have to get it. I mean, it's not unjust. He's asking for it. And he needs to realize when you don't respond properly, then Dad has to do this. Mom has to do this. I don't want to do it. I'd rather treat you like sister. Sister, when we talk to her, she repents. So we can kind of skip the chastening. She's already doing what chastening is supposed to bring about, and you're not.
One follow-up to that. How about in the case, because the child that is compliant, what if they then, their attitude becomes, I don't want them to become pietistic because they know they're compliant, they know they're obedient, but then because kids are close in age and they're children and they're simple, they're like, well, you're probably going to get spankings. You get the spankings.
Of course.
I don't get the spankings.
Of course. I mean, there's no way to, I don't know how you would ever stop all of that. But she needs to, or he, whoever it is, needs to understand, look, you need to help your brothers. You need to help your sisters and brothers because they're having a hard time. You don't be arrogant over them because that will mean you're not learning your lesson like I think you're learning. If you're learning your lesson, you're going to be humble, you're going to help them, you're going to help them to deal with things, to learn how to do it right. And don't exalt yourself over them because then you're going to get a spanking. If you do that, because you're clearly not learning our lessons like I want you to learn them. But just humble.
One thing that I've tried to be consistent in remembering to say to certain of our children in that type of situation is, I'll say, how can your brother or sister express gratitude to God for the way you're treating them right now, or the way you're talking to them, if they're Lord in that situation or whatever, and it's losing that relationship, so they can't be joyful or thankful.
Right. That's
So
a good way.
make an adjustment.
Yeah. Jamie?
I have a question about manipulation. So what if the child, is trying to get out of the spanking, you caught them in the sin, and then right away, well, I'm sorry, but it's not necessarily a repentant sorry. Now, I feel bad because I was caught in the sin. So do you still spank? I mean, like, how do we know not to spank how do you see if they're repentant, or we say,
Well,
no, we still need to spank because
It,
we still need to learn
it just depends on the child. You know the child and you know how he operates, and you can just say, okay, look, this is what you do. You always say, I'm sorry quickly, but you don't really mean it. And so we need to make sure you mean it. And so either you spank or you don't, or you say the next time this happens, I am going to give you a spanking because I want you to learn this. Because this is your tendency. You just say, I'm sorry to get out of the spanking. That's not the way this works. And so it depends on the child. So.
I know there's no absolutes, but when talking about older children and getting away from the physical chastening of your child, and I know different children, there's differences. Like you could look at me and say, I'm disappointed in you, that's all it would take. But my sister, you could spank her until she was blue and it would never sink in. But is there not a place, or is it a poor reflection of how God chastens us to use grounding as a form of discipline?
Maybe putting it in the way of taking away certain privileges, better than grounding. Grounding implies isolation from communion and fellowship, and that's where I would say God doesn't do that to us, though He will take away privileges. So if I do certain things, I'm not allowed then. I lose that privilege. And that, I think there you can combine that with the children just saying, okay, you continue to do this, and it's clear that you don't want to learn this lesson. So we're going to take this away for a while until you can show that you're learning the lesson. That's a different thing than shunning them and making them sit in isolation. I was with this on a plane one time, and the lady next door always say, what do you do for a living? She does. I mean, we're talking, and I'm saying, so what do you do? She goes, oh, I'm an advisor for the public school systems in the country. In the country? I said, so you're employed in Washington? She goes, yeah, I travel around to every public school system that needs help with things. I said, so what are your specialties? She said, discipline. I said, whoa, wow. I said, so what are you doing for discipline in the public school? This is really interesting to me. She goes, well, we've come up with a very effective method recently. I said, what is it? She goes, it's much more kind than spanking, because spanking is dehumanizing. It's so, I got the lecture. I said, yeah, okay. All right, so what is the method that's better? She goes, well, we've created this black box, and we make them sit in there, and it's total darkness, and it terrifies them. And I said, let me make this straight. You think that's kinder than giving them a few licks with a paddle? She goes, oh, absolutely. It's much more effective, too. I just said, I think that's some of the cruelest thing I've ever heard of. I've heard a few things that are crueler than that. But you see how people think. They won't spank because they think that's cruel. So we'll do all kinds of horrifying, cruel abuse and feel self-righteous about it. This is wicked. It's just wicked. So, yeah.
Okay, so now we have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. We're beginning to see the fussing and fighting that,
Yeah, good.
I'm wondering if you have any words of wisdom on finding the balance between allowing them to figure some things out on their own and stepping in immediately, to correct.
No, I don't think necessarily you step in. I mean, unless there's a dangerous situation you do. But I mean, normally these little bickerings, I think you can sit and see how it works out and then come back and say, okay, that didn't work out very well. Here's what I want you to do. And let them apply and learn how to do this. And they can. I mean, they're just like us. They're still going to get mad and do things they shouldn't. And I think there you just say, this is why you have to learn not to react like that. You're going to end up making everything far worse than it should be. But anyway, yeah, I don't think you immediately step in unless there are peculiar circumstances where it actually is a dangerous situation. But let them work it out and learn how to do that. It's like anything else. They need to fall off the bike and skin the knee and, break your collarbone. That's just part of growing up. Everybody's got to do it. Yeah, John?
I teach my kids not to take vengeance. The one kid, the brother, does something suspicious with me and hurts her, does something, and her response is, well, to do something. And we're trying to teach them to maintain peace. I tell them, look, you come tell me, don't take vengeance and trust that to creating a culture of tailbearing over there, tattling on each other, so it's hard to create a balance. They're 6 and 4 right now. And I don't know if there's a natural age where it becomes, easier to maintain that balance, but the tailbearing is just starting, so they got to a point now where they're not, one does wrong, the other one doesn't, slap them, punch them, but now they're just going to tell them all the time, so what do you do?
Well, I mean, it is difficult to get them to follow the process of Matthew 18, but that's what I would do, basically. I mean, I think they need to learn that vengeance belongs to God, so that's out. You're not to take revenge. God tells you not to, so that's not the way you do it. So how do you deal with this? When he offends you, you tell him that he's offended you, and you say, you need to ask forgiveness. And if he doesn't, then you can come and tell me, and I will get involved. We'll follow the process. So that's not tailbearing. She first tried to deal with, or he first tried to deal with it one-on-one like we're supposed to do. And then if that doesn't work out, I go and get 2 or 3 others. Well, that's mom and dad. So, we go and tell at that point. But that's not tailbearing. That's saying, no, I tried to get reconciled, but he refused. And so that's a pretty simple way of doing it, but that way allows you to get involved, but without having someone's always trying to get the other one in trouble. Yeah, Rob?
Tied into that, maybe for us it's not tailbearing, it just gets petty. And so I'm following Matthew 18 because I'm running here every time.
No.
I don't get the Lego. It all started when he hit me back.
Yeah, all right.
And then you keep running in there,
Yeah.
You said to come talk to you.
Yeah.
We have the same problem.
Well, there's also the whole matter of forbearance and learning to be wronged by your brother without being bitter and all the things like that. So, you got to learn to deal with it and deal with it properly and all that. That's all part of the hardness of life. You got a brother, and God sent the brother to teach you these things. So be happy about that, and let's deal with it rightly. I mean, you can. They don't need to be coming to you for everything like that. Thomas, yours.
Oh, yeah, I just had a thought about Paul's question, because it's something I thought about. I've never been home from the first kid on more than a couple hours in the evening. And, I mean, it's a design feature that dads are going to be gone generally more. But maybe there's an analogy here to, because she can be gone for a day, and when she gets back, they want to spend the whole day with her. I could be gone for a week, and after an hour is good,
I know. It is funny. I would be gone and walk back in and go, oh, you're back. Hey. And I'm saying, hey, everybody. They're going, oh, hey, Dad's back. Hey, did you see Dad's back?
There's a special need for more of mom than dad.
Yeah.
And maybe there's an analogy there with the church and the need to be around other people and the bride of Christ.
I think so. Yeah.
All of that, trying to channel Jim Jordan there, see
Yeah.
what the significance is.
Yeah, listen, let me think. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Thomas. Let me say that the pizza is ready, and if you want to go down there and start, please do that. We can still talk up here if you want to, but I don't want to keep you. I know you got schedules and stuff, so feel free to leave. Alex?
We have an issue where one of the boys will follow the other route, and we pick something up, take it from him, and push it out. How exactly do we deal with that situation? On the one hand, we want being pushed out to just be kind, share, but it's constant. You will literally just follow him around, take it, push it down, get back up, grab something else. You drop whatever the bully drops whatever you first took, and then takes it again.
Because this is the older or the younger doing it?
Yeah, older bully.
Older's bullying the younger. Okay, I would just say you're acting like a Marxist. No, just say, man, you gotta show consideration for your brother. If he's playing with something, I mean, we realize he doesn't own it, but that means it ain't yours. You can ask him if you can play with it, but you don't just snatch it away, because there you're starting a fight and you're being a communist, and that's not good. We don't want that.
I think, how about more when, not your own children, but it's one of your children, somebody else, and you can't discipline someone else, but how do you teach your kids to, you teach them to just be okay,
No, well, I think there are going to be situations where they're going to have to learn to deal with injustice and swallow the injustice. So as far as you're dealing with them, say, there's some times where there's nothing you can do except just go ahead and accept it, and don't worry, got to work it out, and you're going to feel wronged, but that's life. Mama feels wronged a lot, and Daddy does too. That's just the way we got to learn to deal with that. But then the other thing, if one of the neighbor's children are in your home, I think they're under. I can sit them down and say, hey, you know what? That's not the way we want you to act here. That's not the way we do. Here's the way you want to do it, and let them know. Have them a little time of instruction. You can't spank them or anything like that, but I mean, just tell them, don't do that now. That's only going to cause trouble. That's not. I want everybody to play happily together. Don't try to do things. Don't steal stuff. Don't rob us. Yeah, Paul.
In the two-brother situation, is it inappropriate to say something like, God made you the older brother for a reason? To be an example to your younger brother?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's got to be the leader, and he's got to know, hey, you're the big example in the house, so we're looking to you to help out here, and you're not helping out. You're causing trouble rather than helping be a peacemaker. Your job is to be the example, be a peacemaker, be kind of the help us out. When you see something going wrong, you straighten everybody out, but you don't just cause the trouble. We can't have you doing that. Yeah. Yeah, Alex?
Another question, I'm sorry. This was might be touchy. Comparing children. So I see one little kid, and I'm like, Tyler, you should act like him. He's a great example. And then I see the other kid, you don't want to be like that. So, but at the same time, I don't want to compare himself against every other little kid.
No.
He should aim for a goal. What do I create as an example and not compare it to other kids?
Well, safe example is Jesus, and just keep pointing to Jesus about that, and say, I've noticed that some of the children are really seeking to do that. It seems like to me, and that's the way I want you to be. I want you to be an example to others as well, and please the Lord as you live. So that's the way that's always the best way to live, and that's always the happiest course that you're going to have. And so, follow the Lord, and I'll try to help you understand how that looks and what that looks like, because I want to be the same thing to you. All the stuff that you would normally say, and yeah, I think it's. You'd have to be careful. Sometimes it's fine, I think, to point out somebody else. He did. You see how he reacted to that? That was the way you do it. That was a good job. And I want you to act like that. Remember that the next time when you lose the game, don't throw a tantrum. He congratulated the other team. He did the right thing. Whatever it is, and you can say he was a good example at that point, wasn't he? He's not maybe the total good example in every area of life, but at that point he was, and you can point that kind of stuff out. Yeah. Okay.
Kind of piggyback off of some of that and building expectations of either older brothers or accepting injustice in the world that's coming towards you. As God's people, we have higher expectations of how you act, and instilling that in your child as they grow. Is there a danger of that in terms of becoming self-centered in a sense where you have to accept that because, you can't control how they act, but you can control how you act. And you have higher expectations in terms of dealing with anything, and almost creating playing difficulties where you might think, well, because I am who I am, there's higher expectations for me than others. And then also having that. Is that a question?
I'm not sure. Let me see if I'm hitting it. But some things you can deal with. I mean, if there's an injustice, well, there's sometimes we can actually straighten it out. But there are some things that happen where, if we try to deal with this, all it's going to do is cause far more trouble than it's worth. And so that's where you say, look, there's not really anything we can do to make this better right now. So you have to commit it to the Lord. You have to, don't be bitter, but understand that's the way it happens. It's going to happen again later on, and you've got to learn to deal with this properly. But
right, but the danger of instilling those things in terms of the child thinking self-centered in that sense of, you can't control what they do, but you can control what you do. So worry about yourself. Don't worry about what they do. And so they start thinking about myself, and that I have these higher expectations than others, and that kind of point of view is there.
Well, you mean so that the child becomes arrogant? thinking more highly of himself than he ought to think. I don't think that's I can see that might be a temptation, but I think we can say that when I'm saying think about you can control what you can do, you can't control what others do, I'm not saying think about yourself. I'm thinking about this is the way we live so that we do what is right. And we seek to help others regardless of how they respond to our help. We continue to focus on others. And that's why I can't control what other people do, but that doesn't change the way I know what my mission is, what I'm called to do, and I've got to keep doing that even if they're not responding properly. I don't have to excuse their lack of response, nor do I have to feel like I'm better than they are. I'm not. I do the same thing at various points, but I'm still going to do what I'm supposed to do. And that's the point behind that. Somebody else? Yeah, Stephen?
Do you have any practical applications on when you have to discipline a child for doing something, and then you have to discipline them for their reaction to your discipline?
Yeah.
I mean, we're at the stage where we feel like we have to have a wooden spoon in arm's reach at all times.
Yeah.
And if you have to leave the room to go get it, she'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. And by the time you come back, it almost feels like she's not understanding why she's getting spanked now, because she's sorry. And she's giving hugs, and everything's fine. She's laughing and playing all over again. So.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Again, it's the child here is the variable. It's hard always to make room. But I think just saying out, this is not the way, if you're going to respond to your spanking like this, then that means you have to get another one. I don't want to give you another one. So that's not the way you can respond. I mean, going into it ahead of time, saying, after we spank, Daddy loves you, and I want you to love me, and thank the Lord, and we're going to be happy at that point. That's what happens. That's the way this works. And if you are going to get sin again, and you're going to get unhappy because I love you, then that's not good. And I don't want to have to do it again, but if that's the way you're going to be, we have to do it again. And that way, if you have to leave the room, which isn't a bad idea, actually, going to leave the room and making them realize that that's what's coming. But to come back in, if they're happy, saying, all right, if you're truly happy, then this is the way you have to respond all the time. So this is what we want. You being happy is exactly the way it ought to be. So, okay, keep doing it this way, and you don't have to get another spinning. We've done what we want to do. Try to get it that way. I'm sorry, Deb.
Yeah, I think one thing when Virgil Burke came in, he had this process. We do it this way, so of course, everyone's like, what to do what he does. But I think what was important for us, one, was understanding that attitude is a spectacle offense. A bad attitude can really make life difficult for the child and the parents. And part of it is it's a reconciliation moment. So it's about restoring fellowship. And I think, as Pastor Steve said, they're joyful. I mean, when we found a system of instruction, chastening, forgiveness, it was almost like he was excited to spank. Because suddenly, man, we're going to figure this out a way to be joyful, be happy again. But we also realized that if a spankable offense occurred, and they suddenly were full of remorse and all that kind of stuff, and we didn't follow through with our standard we've set, that it would cause problems with consistency. And then it would become an unknown, it became like a movement, mommy really bad, bad days, good.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were consistent every time, what happens, it becomes less frequent, it feels like it's all the time. And it's just so much more joyful because when you set godly boundaries that were designed to abide by, it's really easy once you get those boundaries set to stay within them.
Right. Yeah, Steve?
Is this something that you can expect out of a 2-year-old?
Not always. I mean, that's you see, that's where I think you take into consideration their frame and the weaknesses there. They've got a long way to go, and so that's why you keep staying with it. I mean, but at the same time, you got to be a little more understanding. This is, she's not 12, and by the time she's 12, God willing, she'll have left that all way behind. But she'll have left it way behind because of what we're doing now, and that's the thing where You want to be lenient. That's why I say if she's happy, and when you come back in, say, hey, this is the way you have to be after we spank. This is the way you do it. Otherwise, Daddy feels like you haven't learned the lesson God wants you to learn. So I don't want to have to do this, but if you like this is great. This is what we want. This is the way we have to be. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's not a bad idea, but you can't always do that, I realize, This,
leaving the room to go find
yeah. Well, you can't have it on your belt. That's a little obvious.
I got a question
Sure.
kind of along those lines too of what's the duration? I have a 2-year-old as well. I mean, temper tantrums can last a few minutes or hours sometimes. So, I mean, how long between the bad behavior and the spanking?
Yeah, I wouldn't let it go on very long. I think you warn and say, now, all right, stop it. Stop. It's time to stop now. That's plenty. You've expressed your displeasure. If you do this again, then Mama has to do something. And I don't want to do it, but we will, because you can't act like this. That's not the way we live. That's not the way we act. And I think, so you try to stop it quickly when there's a bad reaction. It's not going to get better to let it go on. I mean, unless they just wear themselves out and fall asleep or something. But you've missed the point of the whole issue here. That kind of tantrum, think of it, we have grown people that do that now. I don't want him turning into that. And you can tell him, there are a lot of grown people that act just like this, and this is not the way you're to act, because you can't live this way. But yeah, I would do it pretty quickly if he doesn't straighten up. Yeah.
So I knew a child that approaching a spanking would completely lose countenance, just go into the temper tantrum just right away. And it was dangerous for him because I was going to hurt him
Yeah.
or hurt myself.
Because he wouldn't be
just
still.
trying to get this done. The thing that turned it around was they usually get three flags. And I would say, you're going to get 3, 2 if you're brave. And they would have to come to me,
Yeah.
lean over, get the 2, and it really helped. It was,
Yeah.
you need to approach this with bravery, with courage. You have to know why you're here.
Take a responsibility for
but
what you
come.
do. Right.
And if you don't come, then it's going to be 3.
Yeah.
why this is happening. But
Not
it's
gonna
2
get
if you're
better.
brave, and that really helped a whole lot.
Yeah, that's a good way. Good idea.
Yeah.
Boom, another one. Boom, another one.
I said I like that better than just adding them on. Okay, you get this many,
Well, and
then as you're not, it's just counting.
You were not brave, you didn't take so, let's try again. You're gonna have to do
But still, I like the option of less.
Okay. All right, I think it's time for pizza. Thanks for coming. Thank you for coming. Seriously, this is good. Appreciate it. Oh, let's pray.